Drake.
And I'm Sarah Wheeler, and this is The Mother of It All, where we take on culture through the lens of motherhood and motherhood through the lens of culture.
Hello, Sarah.
Hello, summertime Miranda.
Freshly. First day of summer break.
Oh, right. Your
For
summer.
us.
Oh, wow. How's that going?
So far so good. The kids are at the zoo.
Just do that. Just do that every day till Labor Day. You'll be fine.
Kids are at the zoo. There was a swim lesson, and I feel overbooked in life in general, which I think is summer. That's everyone's summer, right?
I guess. I mean, yes and no, right? You're supposed to be like underbooked with stinky stuff and overbooked with fun in the sun.
Yeah, that's my goal. Like, I want to be underbooked. I just want to go to the pool and have slushies and popcorn and put my kids to bed kind of late, and then everyone sleep in. And like, but things keep happening. Like, I keep
people don't
busy.
know it's summer in the world. Well, this is why you have to work in education, because like if you're in education, and I guess I'm like half in education, you know, and then half of my work is with lamos that still keep working in July, but is like everything really does stop, and it's beautiful.
That sounds so good.
Yeah, it's like the only way that teachers cannot like just like, you know, jump ceremoniously off of cliffs every June is that you actually get a few months off.
Yeah. Well, actually, okay, so unrelated to summer, I did want to talk to you about this book that I'm reading. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Nightbitch.
Are you trolling me?
I don't know if anyone's heard of this book.
I should I want to bring into focus like a jumbo Nightbitch mug, but I don't have one. So if someone was looking for a gift for me, that would be something. It's a hole in my belongings. I'm reading it for the first time. Were you lying to me when we became friends that you'd read that book, or did you just kind of like fail to mention that?
Did I say I had read it?
I feel like, you know, a lot of times I was just going on about it, and you were doing that thing where like you don't implicate yourself, but you're like,
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like I knew the premise, and I had the book, and I was like gonna read it, but I had this awareness that I couldn't read it while I was in like freshly postpartum mode.
That was wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that way now. Like now that I am reading it, I'm like, this was the moment. Like not until now was I ready mentally.
Yeah,
like,
there's a Nightbitch window.
Almost 3. Yeah. So I think I'm in it. Like Nellie's almost 3. It's very relatable. Like the toddler in the book feels maybe like 18 months or something. I don't know if they say. And like, I'm ready to think about that because that's also behind me. And I'm not, you know, but it's really good.
Yeah.
The book is good.
Yeah, I know, Miranda.
Shocker.
And yes, I already have December 6th, the movie release, like circled on my calendar. I'm waiting to be invited to like the premiere. That's what I'm going to be working on this summer is getting invited to the Nightbitch premiere.
Have we do we know, is it going to be like CGI dog?
Oh, is the dog going to be? These are the important questions. I mean, I'm sure the dog is going to be CGI. I think. Yeah, I haven't talked to my contacts in the industry. It's not going to be puppets. It's not a Jim Henson movie.
That's what I want. I want Jim Henson puppets.
It's Amy Adams and it turning into a CGI dog. I think is what. Yeah, spoiler. Yeah. I'm so glad you liked it, though. I think as the movie comes out, we'll be talking about it a lot more.
Yes. And this is my transition into talking a little bit about our summer book club.
Yes.
Because I do read sometimes, if it is a few years behind everyone else, so be it.
Yeah, you don't just have books on your shelf and kind of white lie that you've read them.
Sometimes I read them. Yeah.
Yeah, summer book club.
So Sarah, I thought we could do an FAQ where we talk about and we explain what the Mother of It All Summer Book Club is and how people can do it with us and perks, etc. Okay, so I'll ask
faintly answered questions. Yeah, I'm just gonna like partially answer, partially go on a tangent. That's how this works, right?
That I would expect nothing less from you, and please deliver.
Fractionally answered questions. Go on.
Okay, so what is the Mother of It All Summer Book Club?
I'm so glad you asked, Miranda. Okay. I mean, what are any of us? What is existence? You know, what is culture? Mm-hmm. It's evolving, but essentially to me, it has 3 parts. We've got kind of this ongoing thing this is all over on our Substack, where we have our reading lists for the summer that we've announced, and we're trying our best to read as many of them. We will definitely go off script. And
stretch goals.
Yes. And then we're going to do some little book reports about what we're reading, me and you, for people to enjoy. We're also going to encourage other people to share what they're reading. At the end of the summer, we're going to do a little kind of like show and tell Zoom meeting to invite people to kind of talk about their summer reading, what they loved, what they hated, with constructive feedback sandwiches, respect authors, and there might even be an appearance from a personal pan pizza, which I think for many of us, this has been really in the culture lately. Yeah. Rachel Kong was talking about it on her on her Real Americans book tour. A lot of us associate summer reading with earning that pizza. Amil will tell us if this is just an American thing, or they do it in Canada. But
is there pizza in Canada?
No, that's not my question. My question is, is there some other reward that at the end of the summer, when you get a lot of stamps on your reading card at the library, you get there something? Could anything possibly be better than a personal pan pizza? And then the other part of it is that we actually have like a book club, and we're having a book club meeting on August 7th, where we're going to do a live recording of the podcast. And our book club is based on just an absolutely moving, stunning book of essays called Attachments by Lucas Mann. It's about fatherhood and Meet Joe Black, and body shaming, and all sorts of other things. And it was just reviewed glowingly in the New Yorker by Hua Shu, who also wrote a beautiful book about male friendships. So sensitive men are in this book. They're loving this book. I loved this book, and I can't wait to share it with people. So you can go to our Substack and learn about that book club and sign up for that meeting and read alongside us.
Beautiful.
You did
all of them. You answered all of my questions.
Yeah, phenomenally long answered questions.
Which is great. I think the TLDR is like, come follow us on Substack, because we're gonna have some stuff going on this summer.
We already do. It's there. It's waiting for you.
It's happening. And even though the podcast will be taking a short break between seasons, you can hang out with us there. We will be active on Substack even while we're doing summer stuff with our kids.
Yeah.
And then the podcast will return at the end.
It'll return. It's coming back. And I want everyone to know too, we have range. There's highbrow, lowbrow, yes, I need to get into Yule Abyss. And also, I just got a copy of Pucking Around, TikTok's biggest hockey-based romance. And that is also on the list. So We've got something for everyone.
Yeah, I think, I realized I didn't broadcast my lowbrow reads, but usually those are the things
you should. That's important for the culture.
I don't plan them, though. It's like I'm trying to go to sleep and I have to see what's on Libby, and then I just have to take whatever I can get, and then that's usually my lowbrow read. So maybe they'll be like wild cards, like I just read Beach Read.
Like wild card. Yeah.
It was steamy. Everyone's probably read Beach Read.
The book was called Beach Read? I thought you meant it was a beach read.
No, if it is a beach read and it's called Beach Read, and if anyone wants to read like hot and steamy stuff.
Everyone does.
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be that. And then I was lying there
hockey?
Trying to go to sleep, and my heart's racing. I was like, I'm trying to fall asleep.
Okay, that's what I want your first book report to be on, please. I'm commissioning.
Okay, it seems like kicking off summer reading with Beach Read is appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, I would love to write about. I would love that. I will do that. You heard it here.
Yeah.
First.
I promise.
All right. So, let's get into from books to the meat of our episode, which is our lovely guest, Amil Niazi. Amil is a writer and producer based in Canada, and Sarah and I love her parenting column, for The Cut, which is called The Hard Part, which explores the intersection of work and motherhood. Welcome, Amil.
Hello.
Hello. We are very excited to have you here. We both really do love your work. And we always open with the same question, which is, who is caring for your kids right now?
Well, one is at daycare, one is at school in aftercare, and one is upstairs napping. And if he cries, then my husband will go get him. He's on paternity leave, and that's why he can do that.
We've always wanted to talk to you, but your piece about millennial midlife, kind of like economic anxiety, that published, I don't know, a couple weeks ago in The Cut, framed as like millennial midlife crisis, and centered around ideas about success, ambition, achieving some kind of dream job scenario, or any kind of permanence or sense of stability in adulthood as a millennial. When I read it, and I know it really resonated with Sarah too, I felt really called out and also seen when I read your description of the sort of like economic scramble and sense of instability that many of us feel. I'll just read this little quote because I felt really targeted. You say, despite divorcing myself from a specific model of success in the process of leaving ambition behind, I do work hard. I work harder than ever because I'm terrified of what happens if I don't. I've spent the last year looking into what getting a real estate license would entail, looking up how to become a plumber's apprentice, Googling the best graduate degrees if you want a steady job that pays good and will let you retire one day with dignity. It's a midlife crisis, no doubt, but it's not born out of restlessness or a rosy remembrance of things past. It's panic that this is as good as it's going to get, and what lies ahead could be worse. I'm not just worried about myself. I have young kids and my parents are getting old. Can I care for everyone and myself? So in some ways I found this comforting because it's just like, oh, I do that too. I'm constantly like, okay, what's my plan B? My plan C? And okay, my husband, if he got laid off, what would we do? And I already got laid off, and that was like, okay, I'm going to never get a full-time job again because then you just get laid off. So I'm going to actually do like 5 things instead, so that if one of them falls through, I've got other things. I mean, it drives so much of my decision making, like this sense of like, I don't know, so the scramble. So yeah, it's like, it was comforting, it was cathartic, but it's also kind of depressing. Like, are we going to be okay? Are you going to become a real estate agent? Like, what? Talk to us.
First of all, I feel like I would be an incredible real estate agent.
I would buy a house from you if I could buy a house. Well, I mean, that loops back to this topic.
Exactly. I actually really don't know if we are going to be okay. And I think that kind of bracing reality maybe is good, because I feel like I've been living in maybe a state of delusion, like a lot of us, for the first 40 years of my life. Like, something better for sure is coming down the pipeline. And I think a lot of your 20s and 30s are spent imagining the better future that's down the line, right? You're paying your dues, you're putting your nose to the grindstone so that you can reap the rewards in 10, 20 years. Whether that's retirement or a house, or God forbid I say, like a lake house or a boat or whatever people used to have, right?
Like your vacation house, and it all just happens for you. It'll just happen.
It'll happen if you work hard and you stay positive. Then those things can happen. They happened for a lot of our parents and their parents and their parents, right? That those were achievable things. I live in Toronto, in Ontario, where there are tons of people who have inherited cottages, because that was a thing a teacher and a nurse could do together. They could go and they could buy some lakefront property, and now it's worth like $2 million. So obviously I can never do that, but these were achievable things, and they weren't, totally out of pocket to want or to strive for. And a lot of the feedback that I got from this piece, and you're not alone. I had tons and tons of people reach out to me and say, thank you for articulating this, because this is how I've been feeling. And it actually makes me feel a lot better to know I'm not the only one, you know, because I think a lot of people think, oh my God, I should be more successful, or I should be more prepared for the future, or I should, you know, I should have more given my age. And to know that you're not the only one, I think is a huge relief. And I just really feel that another really overwhelming sentiment that I heard was, I'm not asking to be rich. I'm not asking to make like $1 million or even like $100,000. I'm just asking to comfortably get by, you know, like what I actually have a similar sort of more reported piece coming out in The Guardian soon. I spoke to, different people, different millennials in midlife. And this one woman spoke to me and she said, I just want to make $70K. She has a child, she has a partner, and that's literally all she's asking for. And she's one of those lucky ones that graduated without debt. She started a small business that's been pretty successful. She's been paying herself and her employees and giving them like a decent livable wage. And this person who, you know, you could imagine holding them up as like the pillar of financial responsibility and success. And she's telling me she just wants to be able to make 70 grand a year. Like, that is not asking for too much. You know what I mean? And she feels like she'll never buy a house. If she does ever have property, it'll be because her mom dies and she gets her mom's house. And I think that's a lot of people think, whatever I get in life, it's going to be because someone died. And that's a horrible thought. No one wants to hope for that. Yeah. And that's if you're lucky enough to have any type of inheritance, right? Like, I will not inherit anything except for a funeral bill. And that's a very sad and harsh thing to think and say, but that's the reality, I think, for a lot of people. So I know it's depressing, but I think it's also kind of positive to like let yourself understand that, and then maybe that helps you enjoy the next 10 or 20 or 30 or however many years we get to live more. But
Amil, how much do you think it's about political and economic forces versus kind of how millennials were raised, right? Like, I'm thinking about, I had, like my, grandfather came to this country. He was like a glazier. He had an auto glass shop, then, he, like you said, like, you work hard. And then my mother's generation, like, she went to college. She, she got a scholarship. She was valedictorian. She, like, her and my dad were therapists that had good work-life balance and 5 kids and owned a house, just like you said, not a lake house, but we had some nice things. And the idea was, that each generation would kind of have more and more opportunity. But I do think, like, her generation was raised to work hard, and she was a woman in like the 60s to like prove yourself. And then, millennials are kind of the like, pick me generation, the special generation. Like, I certainly was more comfortable as a young person with like following my dream or whatever, instead of, staying in teaching, which was my first profession, which I now understand if I'd done consistently for 20 years, I would have, a retirement plan that is pretty nice. And I have regret about that. So is it that like we're all trying to be freelance writers, and now we're kind of coming to, grips with the reality of that financially? Or how much is it that we just really live in a different world, and if we'd made the same choices, we would be more comfortable in another generation?
That's a good question. I mean, they're just like the day after, I think, my piece came out, there was a study that said, they polled maybe 1,000 millennials and about retirement, about their financial position in midlife. And, overwhelmingly, the majority of these people polled said that they felt that they were not in a good financial position in midlife, and they were very worried about the future. And so we definitely feel like we're worse off. And some of the numbers do suggest that, you know, that feeling is not necessarily true either. Like
we're also the anxious generation.
we're set, you know, millennials are, they're the majority of homeowners now. They're set to inherit this massive amount of money from their boomer parents. So there's like changing numbers and skewing numbers, but there's also how we feel about our finances. I think we feel, like you said, Miranda, we could be laid off at any moment, that there is not that sense of stability. And that's real, like collapsing industries, media, a lot of tech, obviously, you know, things like broadcast, the art, you know what I mean? Like if you want to be an artist in any sort of creative class that's essentially crumbling, that's not made up, right? That is real. That is happening. But people in tech and finance are feeling that too. They're feeling this shifting sands constantly around them, that maybe they have a job today, but that job is not promised tomorrow. That's a reality. We're still, a lot of us recovering from the 2008 crash. You know, a lot of people were hit hard by that, and financially the pandemic. I think a lot of us are also recovering financially from the pandemic. If you were lucky to retain your job, great. But many people's jobs and their, you know, savings were depleted in those 2 or however many years. You know, I know we're still in a pandemic, but I'm talking about that kind of core period of lockdown,
like
and,
the lockdown,
and whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those things are very, very real. But another thing that I heard a lot, and that I feel, Sarah, that you were talking about, is people saying, God, I wish my parents didn't tell me to follow my dreams. Like there is this sense that we were led down this, you know, rosy path, and it was like a path straight into the devil's mouth, because here we are, all of us feeling like we are destined for greater things. And how dare we waste away at a 9 to 5, like some cog in the machine, when we should be telling the world our story. And I think that a lot of people of our generation did feel like it, you know, we should be allowed to do whatever we want, because that's what our parents told us we could do.
And that is what they were fighting for in a way, right? They wanted to save for us. And, you know, my parents, if you follow a really common generational pattern that people our age, you know, have in their history, they, you know, my parents were better off than their parents, and they wanted their kids not to worry about money like they did. And then the gift was that, you know, the gift was follow your dreams. But you're right. I had this moment a few years ago when I have friends who are lawyers, a married couple who are a lawyer, and they just bought their second vacation home. And I was just like, wait a minute, all I would have had to do was like suck it up and be a lawyer. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I have the skills that these people have. Maybe I'd be bad at it, but you know, I don't know. I'm sure I could have figured it out. And I could have had that. Like, I don't think I understood how important money was. And I too would like to make $70,000. That would be
it's all like,
great.
It's yes and, right? Like, I think also you know, for what it's worth, like, I just prefer not to read about the state of the economy because it stresses me out. But my husband is usually up on it. And like, it's not to be really just super basic, but he loves to throw around statistics that do comfort me about inflation and about, like, you know, the way that the very, very rich have gotten very, very richer, and then everyone else is not. And and then things like, you know, I was thinking about two things. What you said about what our parents told us, you know, I think about that a lot. My mom has a PhD and my dad has a master's degree. And I think in good faith, they thought that, you know, go to school and study what you want to study, and really believed in a humanities education. And I love that idea. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think it's a culturally important thing. And I think that it's insanely expensive. Yeah. And when I did not understand what I was taking on when I went to graduate school. And then of course it's a scam, right? Like the money of it is a scam. And so when I graduated and thought, okay, I've arrived, here I am. I had a job at Food and Wine magazine. I felt like, okay, it got me where I wanted to go, right? This is correct. And then I got the bill and it was like, oh wait, my interest payment is $800 a month, and that's just the interest, and I'll be paying that for the rest of my life.
Yep. They went to school a lot cheaper. And those things, it's not just inflation. Those things have changed. Like I once calculated with my dad, I was like, how did you buy this house when you were, you know, like a therapist working part-time with like, you know, emotionally disturbed kids and, you know, and you had a bunch of children and you bought this house in Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's like, well, it was run down. It cost, you know, $180,000. And I was like, yeah, but back then that must have been $1 million. And we looked it up and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't at all.
No, it's totally different. I mean, it doesn't actually, none of it really makes sense. And then another factor that that you touched on is like the changing landscape of work. And when I was on staff at Romper, I wrote an article about what this Australian guy has called Generation Alpha, which is our kids, supposedly. And, you know, it's kind of like marketing speak. It's like, how do you sell stuff to Generation Alpha is kind of the why he's doing this. But nice guy. But anyway,
makes more money than we do.
No offense, Australian guy. But what I thought was interesting was, you know, because it's like marketing speak, he was trying to put a positive spin on what they will inherit, which is like a changing climate, a population that is larger than it's ever been before, and increasing to a certain extent, some scarcity. And he was saying like I forget even how he framed this as a positive thing, but it was like, no one will expect to retire. People will live really long time. You'll have 10 careers. You won't have like one career. You'll have a bunch of different jobs that you do, and that's what everyone will be doing. And the people who succeed will be agile and have hustle. They'll be creative. They'll be adaptable. And these are the skills that our children will need to succeed in this new like global reality. And on one hand, it's like, great, I want my kid to be agile and resilient. And on the other hand, I think we are doing we are doing that. And that is not what we were raised to do. It was, and
we were raised to be specifically not resilient.
I'm thinking, Amil, about the book that you're working on, about, you know, what ambition means. And when you start to question the system that you're operating in and the whole thing, it's really difficult to maintain any sort of desire to even have hustle if you have it at all. And even if you feel like you do have it, you're like, well, what is it for? Like,
what is hustle for? Tell us, Neil.
I mean, it kind of goes back to this idea of like, you know, the snowflake, and this idea that each of us of our cohort are special and deserve to, you know, make films or write books or, you know, podcasts, whatever, you know, whatever dream you have to be, you know, Lee Iacocca or whatever, you know, Jimmy Buffett, like whatever, Jimmy Buffett, Warren Buffett.
I am literally reading a Jimmy Buffett biography right now.
I would love to be Jimmy Buffett.
All we want to do is just, you know, slip away into Margaritaville.
Exactly.
I do.
We have to go get jobs.
But you know, whatever
Warren Buffett,
whatever thing that you thought would be like you at your, you know, best and shining version, the version that your parents see, like the very first piece I wrote about losing my ambition was like sort of posited as what's wrong with mediocrity. And if we could just embrace the idea that actually statistically, most of us are just average, like we're kind of good at some stuff, but you know, we're not that good. Like we're not going to rise above the fray. And why is that a bad thing? Like why is just being good enough such like toxic to a lot of us? I think not everyone, obviously, because there are, you know, millions of people just going to work every day and feeling fine about it. But there are, I think, some of us, I put myself in this bucket that feel like, you know, Sarah, I had I don't want to say great. I had a good job working in news at the public broadcaster in Canada. It was a staff position. It's union. There is like, you know, you get more and more vacation, and the longer you're there, you are paying into a retirement plan that they are matching funds to. Like at this point, like
I'm getting a little turned on.
You would kill like I said, a top up on your parental leave,
top offs left and right.
And I got that job when I was like 26 or 27, and the whole time I was there, I was like, this is such a crazy waste of my time, because I am so much better than just some nameless, faceless person. Some just like a 9-to-5er that sits down, like my butt's getting big, I'm getting stiff person syndrome probably. I have IBS just from sitting in a chair. Like I need to be out there in the world shining. And so I quit that job like a fool. I got a job at the BBC, and then I quit that job like a fool. I went freelance. Like, what was I thinking? And of course, there are times now in my life as a freelancer when there's like just what do you call those dust balls?
Moth, like a
tumbleweed?
A tumbleweed, like a tumbleweed blowing where my, funds should be. And yet I have never felt better in my entire life. And that's the hard part. Is the hard part. That's the part I think that people struggle against, because it does feel good to be free. It does feel good to be in charge of how you work and what you work on, and to have people recognize that you're the one that did that work. That's a big part, right? I mean, okay, no Karl Marx here, but like true. You want to feel connected to the product that you make, and when you're working in some of these big companies, like you just don't. You're just a person that shows up and you do your work, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've done both, and I'll tell you, I feel so much better in the tumbleweeds.
When I was a teacher and I was accruing that retirement, I was like masking ADHD, working late every night, having like nightmares about anxiety, about stuff I hadn't finished. I felt awful. Yeah. And it wasn't that the work wasn't valuable. It wasn't like I was like, working for the man, it was like, it's school. It was fabulous. But I am happy now. And now I don't know what to do about that, because, am I spoiled? Like, and, I'm listening to us talk, and I think this is so fascinating. I'm like, do we just sound like a couple of spoiled, totally comfortable enough
to a lot of people? Yes.
Compared
100%.
to a lot of people. Yeah. And how do you make, you're writing about this. How do you make this crisis, relatable and make it so that people can empathize with it, instead of just rolling their eyes again at this generation that kind of wants to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah. I mean, of course I was worried. I'm always worried how it's going to be received. And there's a part of me that thought, are people just going to say, well, get a job? Like,
get over it.
But the truth is, so many people are in this position, and they're they're not necessarily freelancers or creatives. A lot of people who work many, many jobs. And I'm not talking about freelance jobs writing for The Cut. I'm talking about people who are doing really exhausting gig work, or people who are going out and, doing a 9-to-5 and then doing a night shift because they cannot afford to live. There is a cost of living crisis. That is real. That's not imagined.
I took a full-time job, and a year later I got laid off. And my husband works in tech. And so also I think, to acknowledge that in my freelance life, it is a luxury. My husband is our insurance, is our, primary mortgage payer, and so on and so forth.
Which is a reality for a lot of people. It's mine too. Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's also like he lives with the constant threat of being laid off in his industry. And so to choose a freelance career, and I do, quote unquote, like hustle, I have like too much to do. I often work after bedtime. I work until 11 p.m. I work on the weekends. Like I do work all the time. And yes, it's creative, and there's an element of luxury to it. And then there's also like, it's our back. You know, if my husband got laid off, all these little things I do would carry us through, and I could blow them up into more and cover us. And there's this sense of under late stage capitalism, like, what is security? You know, what it's not like a full-time job feels secure. Like when I had a full-time 9 to 5, I didn't feel secure. I worried all the time about getting laid off. Like I still have these ideas that have been handed down to me about what I should have or what's in my children's, in the US, it's called 529. It's like your college savings accounts. And I opened them dutifully for my children when they were born. And they're very bleak. And, you know, it's like you carry it in this, it's like the flip side of the snowflake. Like on one hand, it's like, I'm special and I'm great. And on the other hand, it's like, and I can do it all myself because I'm special and great. And then I feel all this guilt. Like, well, I'm 40 and I'm a parent, and why don't I have money for my kids? Like my mom saved me when I couldn't pay for grad school.
Right.
I can't do that for my kids.
Yeah, Amil, you just had a third kid. I mean, you have a baby, and you've written about your choice to have a third kid in a way that I found really interesting, and people's kind of judgment about that. So how do you factor, like, you know, there's the millennial midlife crisis, right? Yeah. Which is that, like, the midlife crisis is supposed to be rebelling against comfort, right? It's supposed to be that, like, you have this comfortable life, you have a nice house and a stable everything, and you're rebelling against that because you want instability. We have this kind of flip thing where we have tons of instability. So the rebellion becomes very complicated. But then for many of us, we complicate it by also having children, and kind of thinking about how we, you know, not just how we provide for them, but also like how we approach child rearing given all of this. And there's been a lot of interesting kind of chatter recently. I don't know, did you read What Are Children For? This new book. I
know about the book, and I read a little bit of like what's been happening on the Cut all week, which I think is very, very funny, but very interesting. And I kind of love it. Like, you know, all these different ideas of, you know, if whether you're changed or not. Miranda, I think you just wrote a little bit about that. I really loved what you had to say. And it's funny. I think having a third baby could be seen as a form of rebellion for sure. When I polled other women who I think are like me, some who had 3 children, some who had 2 or 1, about like, you know, tell me what it's like. Are you happy that you had 3? Do you regret not having a third? You know, what should I do? And almost like uniformly, everyone told me, do not have another baby. And, you know, to me, that's like basically just telling me to have another baby because I will never do what I am told is the right thing to do. But I also thought a lot about, you know, the reason, a lot of the kind of employment reasons they told me not to. I thought about my constant instability. I thought about the kind of life that I want to have. I thought about what living looks like to me and what I actually get out of being a human and being alive. And for me, my kids, my family, it's, other than writing, is the best part of my life. And so why wouldn't I have more of that? Why would I sacrifice that feeling and that beauty and that joy to work more? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how the scales were tipping. And I just thought, I'm not going to do that. And I'm so like, it's hard. It's so much harder. I'm like drowning in all of the things that I have to do work wise, but it's just incredible. Like, I look at this baby and I think, I'm so glad I did this one more time. And, you know, part of it is seeing my kids get a little bit older and their feet are not as, you know, round and their hands are not as round. And I think about, I just love to torture myself. So I imagine, like, you know, me older, reminiscing about them as babies. And I was like, no, I gotta have this feeling one more time.
You're like the lady in I Love You Forever, like carrying the grown up kid to bed.
Yes, exactly. No, that book is not okay.
No, I should read that book. I don't know why you would torture yourself.
We'll do a whole episode unpacking that. Too much.
But you know, we have statistically, we also as a generation are having children later in life. And so
that's a lot of what this book is about, is that like, it's kind of, they're kind of arguing that what is it, Anastasia, Berg, and Rachel Wiseman are the authors of this book, What Are Children For? And I haven't read it. I've just read a lot about it, which I know is not the same, but I'm interested in the discourse. But, that kind of liberal millennials, are kind of not having children for a variety of reasons, partly kind of because of how, we see ourselves socially and our anxiety, and that in fact, like, to have children, as you said, is kind of maybe the sanest way to kind of move through this unpredictable world, and shouldn't be seen as like an antidote to like sanity and kind of like responsibility. But I'm interested in the ways that connects to this idea of the millennial midlife crisis. Like, I think part of the crisis is seeing our kids and going like, what the fuck did we do? We brought them into this crazy world. Now, is that just like a collective delusion that our generation has because we're anxious and, we're really sensitive to, liberal causes being dismantled? Or is there truth in that?
Well, I think there is truth in that, but I also think that we're talking about a small section of people who are highly educated, white, sort of middle to upper class women, right? Who are sort of tearing their hair out over, did I have too many kids? Did I wait too long? Should I have them because of the climate crisis? And most people, I think, certainly around the world, don't think that way. They just have children. They have children in times of war. They have children in times of, economic precarity. They have children because children are joyful, and because it's just a natural part, for them, it's just like, that's life. Like, my parents had me and I'm going to have kids. And I think that we tend to, some of us overthink, why should you have kids? And it's like, we exist as a peoples because people did not overanalyze why. It was like, of course you're going to have kids. Like, who's going to till the land? And sometimes I think in the discourse about parenthood, we make it sound like such a burden and such a difficulty and such a price to pay, when I think that is unfair to the joy and wonder of parenting as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, of course it's hard, but the reasons it's hard often are structural, are societal, are that, we're not supported enough, that childcare is too expensive, that housing is too expensive, that food costs too much, that, men don't do their equal share of things. But it's not that a child is going to ruin your life. And so many of the women I talk to, a lot of women read my column who don't have children, by the way. And they often will tell me, I read your column because I am trying to figure out if I should have a kid or not. And you kind of help me see parenthood in a different way than a lot of what I've heard, which is that children will ruin your life, that they'll ruin your career, that they'll ruin your body, that they will ruin your finances. And it's nice to hear a perspective that isn't so grim. Like, if you include that in this discourse about the midlife crisis, a lot of us are having kids as we have this midlife crisis, you know what I mean? And they're young, and we're sort of older. Because we're older and we're having kids in this moment when we're also sort of dealing with this idea that our career may be unstable, that we don't have, this rosy future ahead. And it can also be very optimistic to have a child within that space and mental space. Kind of goes back to what you were saying, Miranda. Like, if you're unemployed, you can't be laid off. And so, within the chaos, embrace the chaos. That's kind of what I did by having a third kid. It was like, you know what? I'm unemployed. I'm freelance, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I call, switch back and forth between the two. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'll ever retire. Why wouldn't I have a third kid?
It also sounds like you're saying, you wonder if we're conflating all of the panic that we feel about, our lives up until now with having children, with like the difficulties of having children, you know, and some that to actually kind of pull those things apart. The issue isn't having children. It's kind of just being an adult right now.
Being a person right now. Yeah, exactly.
Also forever, right? I mean, not to be like, I'm on my usual thing, but you know, life is chaos and mostly always has been. And just because our parents and their parents maybe were able to have this very stable career retirement, or, you know, many of them, not all of them, you know, in the great scheme of human history, like that kind of predictability and comfort is not necessarily normal.
Yeah, that's the aberration. Maybe.
Like for us, you know, we're experiencing maybe a greater sense of chaos, but that's real. And I think I had a baby, you know, I got pregnant in like the middle of 2020, which felt hopeful. You know, I remember talking to my husband about it, and he kept saying, I think we need to wait till this blows over. And I was like, no, you know, like this proves as much as anything has ever proven that we have no idea what is going to happen next. And I love my baby and I want to do this again. And I know I want to do this again. And let's do it. Yeah. I mean, and it felt crazy and hopeful. And it's like, this is the good part of life. Like there's a lot of sucky parts. And
exactly.
These little creatures, I mean, it's a lot. And they do, you know, when you were saying like that people hear that it blows up your career and it ruins your finances. I mean, yes, it does.
Yeah. 100%.
It absolutely does. And so we're just trying to warn you that like, yeah, everything gets way harder and better.
At the same time as it seems like as a little microculture, we're trying to shine a light on care, right? And make care seem, you know, worth paying for, right? There's all this work, you know, wages for housework, and then, you know, and the current version of it, and kind of all of these beautiful efforts to kind of show that care is the most important thing, right? And we don't value it because it's women's work, but it shouldn't just be women's work, and it should be valued. And you know, but then at the same time, we're going, you know, having kids sucks. And there's this Elissa Strauss, who wrote this beautiful book on care, When You Care, published this piece recently in Slate. It's called It's Weird Times to Be a Happy Mother. Some reasons why I'll rarely admit this in public. And it's basically just about how, you know, the honor of being a mother that she feels, but also how kind of dangerous it feels to talk about that at a time when we are focused on, you know, what's not going well and what's hard about it, and how you could kind of hold the two at the same time without one kind of compromising the other.
Yeah, no, I think that is often true. Like I remember putting it out there on Twitter once, like, you know, everybody knows how great it is to have kids, right? Like, I don't need to write about that. And so many people were like, no, I don't know that actually. As far as I know, it's horrible and it's the worst thing in the world. Like, I would love to read a piece that's actually optimistic and hopeful about having kids. And I thought it's something that you only really understand when you're in it, how the two merge, right? How the hard and the beautiful come together in a way that to me, it really is just like the fullness of life. Like, not that you cannot experience moment. Yeah. Of course you can experience it without having kids. But for me, it's like being alive on, you know, 100. It's just in every given moment, I feel so many shades of different feelings. And that makes me feel like I'm not, you know, dead. And that's a good thing. But it's hard to express. It's so much, I think, sometimes easier to go parent to parent about what's difficult, because that's how we bond and that's how we form community,
and
right?
We're always reacting to something, right?
Yes.
And what came before was a lot of rosy pictures. Yeah. And, you know, and then our generation felt like we were kind of hoodwinked and we had to talk about it, you know? And so that's always, nothing is kind of, you know, in a cultural void.
And we want to tell the truth about things, right? And to like kind of bring it back to my piece, I felt like I wanted to tell the truth about what I was feeling about being a 40-year-old woman in 2024. Like, forget the kids, forget everything else. Like, I am scared. I am scared. the next 40 years are not going to look like the first 40 years.
These are all paradigm shifts, right? Like it's kind of like, you know, we tried raising kids the way we were raised. This is how what happened, you know, and I don't know, maybe a new paradigm will exist to kind of accommodate or, shift alongside our generation.
I'm curious about like this moment that we're in and where we go from here. And Sarah, I do hope it is paradigm shifting, because the future of work is irrevocably changing if it's not already totally changed. And we're going to have to adapt to that. And I'm curious about how we do adapt.
Every industry is shifting a little bit, and I don't think we fully reckoned with the pandemic, lockdown and all the ways that changed everything. I mean, there's still all these debates about remote work. And, I think I try to remind myself that like we are still in the fallout from those years. And I think many of us want to just like leave it behind. And it's even like how you're referencing like the 2008 crash, there's so many things that are informing this moment, and we can't predict the future. And then to just
my intuitive can. To clarify.
Sarah knows someone who can, but the rest of us can't. And not to get super basic about this, but like Cup of Joe, Joanna Goddard, I'm going to just quote her, who
Not
I think
basic.
is an anxious person, like as we all are, like, she writes about that a fair amount. And one of her things that one of her cute little, like, here's my great thing that I do or whatever, was about anxiety, was to repeat to herself when she's having anxiety about something, like, what if that doesn't happen? Like, here's the thing I'm worried about. And like, or what if that doesn't happen? Like, I forget what I was stressing about this weekend, but I was really having a panic day. I was like panicked kind of all day, low level panic while trying to care for my kids. And that actually like kind of fixed my panic when I was like, oh, but that's not, oh, I know. It was the stomach flu that was going around my kid's classroom. And every time my 6-year-old burped, I was like, oh my God, he's going to barf. And then we're all going to barf, and we're all going to barf for like 24 hours. And it's going to be horrible. And then I would be like, what if that doesn't happen? Like, maybe that won't happen. And I think that, related to the fear of like everything is changing, and I have no idea if I'm going to ever retire or whatever. And then what if it works out?
Or what if I was happy anyway?
Yes.
I mean, I think that's what, like I'm looking around my like 2-bedroom apartment that I've lived in for 15 years and now have, stretched to accommodate 4 people, where we're like debating right now whether my daughter can sleep in a closet or not. And, like we put an offer on our first house with family money I didn't know we had. Like my, with this thing that you're talking about of the boomer generation being like, yeah, we can help out. And it still wasn't enough. And we still couldn't buy a house. And I was like, but we're rich. And I don't know that I'm under the delusion or willing to go into like, maybe it'll work out that we can just somehow miraculously buy a house in this market. But what if we were happy anyway?
Yeah.
What if we, what if we did sleep in the closets and it was fine?
Yeah.
Or there were sacrifices, but the things that we gained were like you said, Amil, of kind of just spending more time, with your family, for example. What if it was worth it?
Yeah. No, Sarah, I love that. And that's 100% kind of like, after I paint the grim picture, like that's for me where I go next is like, what if this is okay? Like, what if we can adapt our models of success and our picture of what is, a financially sound person or a happy person or a successful person? What if we can change that? What if part of the paradigm shift is seeing that it's okay. You don't need a bedroom for each kid. You don't need like when I told a few friends I was pregnant, they were like, are you going to move into a bigger house? And
I love the piece you wrote about that, Amil.
Right.
It was
we
great.
live in a 3-bedroom house. Like, what are you talking about? Where I'm so grateful to have like this little plot of land. Like, of course I'm not going to move into a bigger house. And I think of like, a lot of the sort of boomer generations, like upgrade, and then shrink. Like, what if we just stayed in a place where we could be comfortable, and that was okay. And not everyone has to have a Property Brothers style mansion. Like, we're not all living in Utah in a Mormon cult. No offense to cultists or
Speak
Mormons.
for yourself.
But oh god, Miranda, do you live in
space?
I was going to share my plans for summer, but I guess I'll keep it to myself.
Or having 2 cars or whatever. It's like I do think it's like, what if this is okay? What if I actually am the happiest I've ever been in the most precarious position I've ever been? And how do I reconcile those 2 things? Right. And then where do we go from here? And I think that where do we go from here actually can be really, really positive and really, really hopeful. But I do want to start that conversation from a place of reality, which is it's kind of grim. It's not what you thought it was. So what's next? And that's, I mean, that's kind of like where I, like my fetish is like being like, things are really bad, but maybe they could be better. Like maybe bad isn't as bad as we think it is.
Your kink is nuance.
My kink is nuance.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cool thing.
Point of the podcast.
Exactly.
I think, it makes me, the whole time we've been talking, I've been thinking about the conversation about that Sarah and I have a lot on this podcast about like how do we talk to people who are going to become parents? Like I usually am thinking of a pregnant person, like pregnant for the first time. Like what do I want to tell them? And I do want to like drive home reality. Like, no, you're going to be so exhausted. It's going to be awful. Like it will be pretty awful. Like you will have never probably felt like that. And like, you're going to rage at your partner and it's going to be really intense. And then you want to be like, and, hopefully you'll feel also like euphoric in a way you've never felt before. And, but I think that the parallel that I'm seeing is just kind of like, what I believe is good is to speak honestly about our personal experiences. And I think that is what was so resonant about your essay, was just because you said it, it made me be like, I'm allowed to say that I'm constantly wondering if I should do like 5 other things with my life. So I'm just grateful for your essay and for your openness, because I think maybe the first thing is that we all just need to be more honest about our situation. Which
is, I would like a whole book, please, Amil.
Yeah, thank you for working on that.
I am working on it while taking care of my baby I had, like a maniac. But I am excited to like delve into all of this stuff, because I think it's what a lot of us are thinking about, and we're reckoning with balancing our ambitions, as a person out in the world, but also with our ambitions as a parent and what kind of parent we want to be, or if we want to be a parent, what kind of work we want to do. Everyone wants to not do any work. And I love that too. I would love to
do the opposite of what they're doing. It's always like grass is greener.
Amil, because you have written and spoken so much about culture, I do want to ask you before you go. I swear the first time I encountered you was on CBC talking about Better Things.
Yeah.
We were like on a culture show and I was like watching it and I felt like no one else was watching it. And whenever I would bring it up, I would get this like blank stare. And this was some number of years ago. And I heard you on the radio and I was like, this is a person who like watches this show and they're on the radio. They're official and they love it. And like, it's a thing. And now, of course, I feel like people are discovering it like in its kind of post run, it's having like a moment finally. But obviously you enjoyed Better Things, but what are your favorite like portrayals of mothers in TV and movies?
That's a good question. Funnily enough, I just talked about this on another podcast where I defended Better Things as perhaps the best depiction of motherhood. Yes. That I've ever seen. Yes. Because it's funny, right? We're talking about the joy of it.
Yes.
There's times when it's hard and she has trouble, and she's also a single mom, which I love. And she just like seems to really love being a parent, but also struggles with many different things. And that to me felt very, very real. So I think that is probably the best, or maybe the most accurate, right? The most accurate portrayal for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously I've seen like The Letdown and Working Moms. And I think like we're getting closer to sort of knowing how to show motherhood on TV without it being corny or too rosy or too dark. But Better Things is like just has nailed it.
Yeah,
in my
agree.
opinion.
I think her, and there's her mom, right? So she's got the pressure of an aging parent who she also loves. I mean, she's very warm, and I feel like the show does such a beautiful job of making it very clear that her kids are central to her being. And she still likes her job, and she kind of does her job also for the money, like the money to support the life that is, you know, her kids. And it's just this beautiful, I agree. I think Pamela Adlon, like,
and the community, like, you know, she has like friends that are like sort of de facto parental type figures to her kids, which I think is so beautiful. And we have that a lot. Like we have a lot of our friends, some with kids, some with not with kids, who are around for holidays. Like, you know, we do a lot of that kind of stuff. And I love, and this is something I think about all the time, is like the way that she is as a daughter and how different that is from how she is as a mom, and how you have to kind of reconcile the way you see your mom and the way you hope your kids see you. And like, can it line up? Like, because the way I feel about my mother is like, God, I hope my kids don't feel that way about me. I love her, but it's like, you know, if I had an Oedipal complex, it would be like, if, you know, Freud and me could have a long, long chat about my mom. And I think, are my kids going to look at me like that?
I feel like they are. I feel like, you know, well, I have a dream that next season we're going to do like a Better Things watch along. We'll see if that happens. And so maybe you can join us for some of that.
I would love to.
We're so grateful to you, Amil. Where should people should definitely subscribe to The Hard Part, your fabulous cut column. Is there anywhere else you want people to follow you?
Follow me on X. I'm also on Substack. It's called Cry, Baby. And then you can read, obviously, this essay in the cut. And then hopefully you can link to my Guardian piece that's coming out about millennials in midlife and how we're faring. And then hopefully I can come back and plug my book.
We would love that, Amil. We are here to support your hustle. Thanks for listening to The Mother of It All. And like my mom always said, just follow your dreams. The Mother of It All is produced by Opus Nox Media with music from It's Electric. You can follow us on Substack at motherofitall.substack.com, where subscribing will get you episodes and bonus posts in your inbox, chat and comment features, episode transcripts, and more. And on Instagram at The Mother of It All. We know you are profoundly busy, but if you like listening and can manage to follow, rate, or review us in a small moment between leaning in and having it all, it will help us reach a wider audience and meet our stretch goal of getting Michelle Obama on the pod. Thanks for your support. Now get out there and have a totally passable day.